New year, next steps. It's about getting resolutions with results. But before we get started, I want to ask you to grab a sheet of paper, if you will, and pause for a moment. And I want you to reflect back as we approach getting to the end of this year. And I want you to think about 2025 and think about some of the high points that happened to you in 2025. Draw a line down the center at the top of that sheet of paper, put 2025, and just write what are some of those accomplishments that you got through in 2025. What are some of those successes or victories that you had? And just take a minute and jot those good things down. And I'll continue to, you can go ahead and keep adding them as they pop into your mind. But on the other side of that line or sheet of paper, I want you to think about the coming year and 2026. All right. And what are some areas in your life that you wish could be different? What are some areas of your life that you wish could maybe be a little better, a little different? You might want to take on something you might learn. Maybe you're building upon a success from 2025, just to kind of keep rolling with that, right? Those things that are just reflect for a minute, looking at 25, move it into 2026. Those are yours. Hang on to those. Keep those things in mind because when you think about it, with the new year bearing down on us, we have an opportunity, right, to set some goals or New Year's resolution with a fresh start, right? A new beginning, if you will, right? Leaving behind what might not have worked for us in 2025, but considering 2026 as a blank slate, a new beginning, something fresh that we can start with, all right? So with that shared and your thoughts from 2025 and 2026, what our objectives are for this training session. We're going to identify, and hopefully you've already started thinking about it, an area of your life that you wish could be different moving forward, right? Thinking along those lines of goals or resolutions or aspirations. Second objective is to understand while failure can occur with our goals and resolutions, right? Somebody says, I try, but I used to, but you don't anymore. So maybe this second objective will help there. And then the third is to understand what it is that people who are successful at resolutions, what is it that they're doing that differently that helps them succeed? So those are three kind of cool objectives that we're going to tackle in this session, all right, as we move forward. So thinking about your future in 2026 and those things that you wrote down that you might want to see different, right? Hopefully that gave you some areas for positive change that you might want to consider. Maybe they could be, and if not, let's just list a couple that might get you thinking about. Maybe you could have some goals or resolutions or some intentions around areas like career or education. Maybe you've got some financial goals that you might want to tackle, or maybe you plan to target some health and fitness areas that you want to work on, right? Maybe it's bettering your personal growth areas that you have in mind. Maybe some social or personal relationship comfort in that interaction with others to make you feel better, whether it's work or at home and people that you interact with, or it could be something completely other than what I've got up here on your screen. And you know what those are. So that can kind of fall into an all-encompassing category. Any of these categories stimulate a little interest for you guys? Because I can tell you these categories that are on your screen right now, these categories, they're the categories that people most oftenly tend to set goals and resolutions around. So those are some target areas that you might want to keep in mind as you're trying to think about opportunities for this clean slate of 2026. All righty? It might be motivating to you guys to know that according to a study by a Dr. Gail Matthews, she's out of the Dominican University, goal setters are 10 times more successful in life than non-goal setters, than people that just don't even put it out there to try to set goals. And that stat is actually fortified or upheld by some familiar statistic attributed from the Harvard Business School that study there that states that 14% of people with goals are 10 times more successful than those without any goals at all. So, success meaning personal happiness and fulfillment, professional accomplishments, right? Personal perception of our goals and achievements can be confidence building, right? Let's just take a look at where we stand as a nation when it comes to resolutions, right? So, what percentage of Americans do you guys think set New Year's resolutions? Actually, 40 to 45% of Americans take a stab at setting some New Year's resolutions. My research found 40 to 45% of us give it a shot by setting a New Year's resolution. All right. So, okay, we got another one here. Let's take a look at this. For those of us that are setting New Year's resolutions, how many of us, what percent do you think actually succeed in keeping them for the full year? So let's see, what percent of us actually do stick with it? 9%. Wow. 9%. So with these stats, we've got our work cut out for us, don't we? Yeah, so let's dive into, why it is it's so easy to fail. And that leads us right into our next objective, right? And understanding why we can fail with these resolutions. Let's take a look at some of this because there's actually some scientific evidence that helps us with this conundrum and why we are maybe not making the mark with these resolutions that we want to set for ourselves because goals can be motivating. They keep us moving forward, give us meaning, don't they? So I'll share with you that the idea that it takes 21 days to form a new habit, well, that's a myth. And I worked for the American Cancer Society for years. 12 years I worked for the American Cancer Society, and they used to say, oh, it takes 21 days to kick the habit if you're trying to stop smoking. Well, I can tell you it takes more than 21 days. Scientific research actually paints a more nuanced picture, if you will. So there's a landmark study by a Dr. Philippa Lawley out of the University of London. And she found in this research that on average, it takes 66 days for a new behavior. 66 days for new behavior to become automatic. But that's just an average because actually the average ranges anywhere between 18 to 254 days. And it depends on the complexity of your habit. So, say, for example, you got a simple habit like just setting a resolution to drink a full glass of water every morning before you have your breakfast. Simpler habits are more achievable, but then those complex habits or resolutions like to exercise daily, that can take a little bit longer. You got to have some plans in place, set some strategies to get there to do that daily. What are your resources you're going to need? What time? How are you going to do this? We got to get a plan for those more complex habits, right? So that might take a little bit longer. So those more complex habits probably took more planning, right? So when you're forming a habit or trying to set a goal, or it's more than just having a fixed number of days. It's more about consistent, stable repetition for a behavior to become a habit, an automatic habit. You have to be consistent and set yourself up with some good solid plans. All right, so it does take more. 66 is an average, but depending on that complexity, it can take a little longer, right, for things to become a habit. Well, here, let's talk about some other reasons that we may be unsuccessful at reaching our goals, right? Our motivation can tend to falter as that enthusiasm wears off. And here's some of that scientific evidence that shows us how and why that enthusiasm and motivation wears off. Dopamine, everybody heard about that? Dopamine is that that surge hormone that we get, and we get excited as we set a new goal because we start looking forward to, what that will mean, a new home, a new car, fitting into those skinny jeans. We get excited about it. That dopamine surge is there because the anticipation of the reward. So after a few days, that novelty of the dopamine starts to fade off. That dopamine starts to level a little bit and become into normal ranges. So that kind of chemically, it reduces our excitement. Another thing is that the reality versus expectations, that initial optimism of setting that goal and I'm going to do this, got a clean slate for 2026, I can do this. Then we start getting met with our old routines, and those habits can get in the way, right? That reality starts to kick in, and the results, maybe they're not immediate, and that motivation dips down, that dopamine's not there. And then we got a third one, that cognitive overload as we're trying to plan. If we haven't set up some plans or gotten some steps into place to help us get little successes along the way, then we get mental fatigue in the last minute trying to cram and make this happen. But look, we're at, what is this? This is the 30th of the year. We're ahead of the game if we're trying to set a New Year's resolution, right? We want to get something set by the first of the year. We can start planning. Start planning now so it doesn't just all hit us with that cognitive overload once we're trying to do this. Then we get that lack of immediate reward. If we don't have ways to motivate ourselves and keep those little serotonin bumps and dopamine coming along the way, that habit doesn't feel quite rewarding quick enough, that motivation's going to decline there too. So motivation is not just about willpower, you guys. I saw that earlier in chat. It's not just about willpower. It's a chemical process. It's a neurochemical process in our brain that's going on. That dopamine that helps seek that reward, right? And then we get the serotonin and the endorphins that feel good as we start to reach some of those action steps and make some progress. So that's good. So just to recap, our brains are wired to resist change. And I saw that in chat earlier too. Our brains are wired to resist change. And that motivation, it's a chemical in the brain that fades after 3 days. So think about it. After 72 hours of starting a new habit, if you don't have a plan in place, we're going to be at great risk to throwing in that towel, right? So let's see what we can do to set up some success, see some results from these resolutions, right? So we need to figure out and find out, what is it that people who are successful at goal setting and what are they doing differently? How are they getting there? So we're going to understand what people who succeed do differently. Let's take a look at it, because there are a couple steps that successful people take in order to get results from their resolutions. Let's take a look at these, right? First one is just to know what it is you want to do. We already looked at that. 2026, when you're thinking, what might I want to be different? Maybe it falls in a certain category, right? Like education or career or relationships, right? But identifying what it is we want to do and be clear on that. And then clarity is understanding why we want that change. Because if we can understand why we want that change, that's a huge motivator for us. So that identifying what it is we want to change is the first step for successful people and what they take. Next is that they break it down into teeny bites, little tiny measurable specific steps, instead of just taking the whole big thing all in at once, right? Then they write it down. So we're thinking about it with these small steps that we need to take, and then we got to write it down, make a plan. We got to write that down, and then be able to track some progress, because that's where we can see the steps and get those little dopamine bumps along the way. Plan for obstacles. Life happens, doesn't it? It happens. So we got to plan for that. Know that things are going to sometimes trip us up. And then certainly not last and least, we got to celebrate those victories along the way. because even those little steps, large and small, we got to make this. Let's dive in a little deeper and take a look at these. So remember those stair steps where we had the various categories at the front end of this PowerPoint? All right, so these are what were on those stairs. These are categories that most people they gravitate towards when they're setting resolutions or goals, careers, education. I don't know. Take a look at that. Any of these interest you? All right. And if you need some specific examples in these, I've gone a little more in depth. It might not be exactly what you're focusing on, but say we're looking at career and education. Are these any areas that you're looking at and that might be of interest to you? Right? Grab a hold of it. Finance goals. Maybe these are some pay off some debt, pay for the cars, right? I see some of you right there saying finance, right? Keep that in mind. We're going to hang on to those. How about health and fitness? Maybe eating healthier, reducing some stress, quitting smoking. What about personal growth? Maybe you want to learn another language, read some more books, all right? Relationships and social. Maybe we just want to get to a point where we feel more comfortable in group settings. What are those goals that we might want to set for ourselves or other? All those things that kind of fit in um, another area that I don't have covered here. There's a handout or a template I've created for you. Sometimes when templates don't fit exactly what we want to do, but go ahead and upload that. Now in chat, you guys, I've created this little tool for you that's going to help you. Hopefully it'll help you. So those of you that are used to it, learning that it's normal, failure might happen, but how we can navigate around it. But this, I want to encourage you to download that, save it. And we're going to walk through some of this together. All right. So at the top of this handout, you can see I've got those categories: career, education, finance, health, all these here. You can take that and highlight it or circle that category that you want to focus on. Us a lot here in finance, right? And then at the top, we're going to just work through just a little bit of this template together. I want you to set a goal. When do you want to get started? When do you want to get started? The date you want to. So it might be, at the end of the first week in the new year. It might be January 1st. I don't know, but you fill that date in. And then what is your goal? A lot of times goals are the overarching things, like your categories: to improve my finances, to improve my physical health, I'll try to use physical health throughout this workshop today just to kind of give you some examples. But, once you do that, I want you to give some thought as to why that's important to you. Why? Because that why it's important to you is a real motivator. We'll keep coming back to that. And then a little bit further down on that template, I want you to give it a rating. If you're setting this up today and you're thinking about how important is this to you as far as a priority in your life, if you're like committed, it's like, daggone it, this is a 10, this is a 9 or a 10. And when that motivation starts to falter, those dopamine levels start to balance out, you might come back and say, well, it was a 9 for me last week. Why is it only a 1 today? Did it become less important? Probably not. So then you can go back and revisit some of these motivators and why maybe that'll boost up some of that motivation again for you. Please download this because we're going to walk through this together, and hopefully this will help you with some resolutions or goals that you might set. So once you've identified what that change that you might want to be making, it's real important to know why that's important to you, because that can be a big motivator for you. So this area on your worksheet that identifies why it's important to you, that's the why, right? So you might want to begin asking yourself why you want that change in your life, right? There might be several reasons, but once you've identified that area that you want to change, you can use that questioning technique that's real easy. It's maybe you've heard of it. It's the 5 whys, just as simple as those 5 whys. So say, for example, you have an overarching goal. I'm going to walk you through this 5 whys example, all right? So the overarching goal might be, I want to be healthier. Well, why do you want to be healthier? To feel better. Why do you want to feel better? I want to feel better because I want to be able to do things, right? Things I want to do. Why? Because I don't want to be left out. Why? Because I want to be part of my friends and family's event. Why? Because I enjoy spending time with them. I enjoy that connection. You get to those things, you start answering those whys. That practice really can reveal your values, what you value. All right. So, for example, those 5 whys is to feel better. That's a value, to feel better, to participate in life, right? To not be left out. That's a value for you, to spend time, to be included, right? To make those connections. So that 5 whys example was full of what I refer to as intrinsic motivators. Now we're talking about motivators for your things that you want to change. So those 5 whys can help you with those intrinsic. So there's some difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivators when it comes to goals. And we're going to touch on those. So, for example, extrinsic motivators. On a real simplistic front, it's things like money, doing something for attaboys or praise, a trophy, rewards, externals, better rewards. Okay. So extrinsic motivators, they can be great, great, great for those short term, if you will, short term goals. So there's a place for both short, extrinsic, and intrinsic motivators. Okay. So say you're sticking with that be healthier goal. Say you want to lose weight. Extrinsic motivators for weight loss goal might be to get ready for the holidays or to look good for your class reunion, right? Or to look good on your social media posts. I don't know. Those are extrinsic motivators. They can motivate you short term, but they're not really sustaining goals because once you hit that class reunion, where's your goal and your motivation then? What keeps you going? But it's those intrinsic motivators. So if you guys are sharing um, extrinsic or external motivators, intrinsic or internal motivators, motivation that comes from within. It's part of our value system, right? That we talked about in those whys, why we're uh, picking a certain goal. So, for example, an intrinsic motivator to lose weight again, say we're going with that, might be for personal satisfaction, might be for a sense of control, self-control, maybe self-fulfillment, right? So these tend to be uh, long-term and sustaining beyond fitting into your jeans or looking good on the social media post or just getting to your class reunion or vacation looking fine because you want that to be sustainable. So that's the difference in those motivators. If you can identify, yep, those extrinsic can be good short-term motivators, but the long-term motivators are those extrinsic, the ones that are tied to your goal, self-worth. Absolutely. Our second step to success is going to help us. Part of that smaller. So we got to start thinking about making our goals into smaller, more specific, measurable steps, kind of like action steps on that handout. So go back to that handout that you downloaded. So these are the action steps. You got to think them through first. So why your resolution might be to get fit. That's the big overarching goal, to get fit, right? So your action steps might be more specific, right? Like to exercise a minimum of 30 minutes, 3 times a week, right? Getting some specificity in there. Maybe a dietary goal and getting fit might be to add a daily vegetable to your diet. All right. So the little action steps to get you to that overarching goal. So you gotta be thinking it through here. Here's a couple things I want you to keep in mind when you're thinking about action steps, you guys. There's just some tips you might want to jot down. The first tip is better to add than subtract. So you can see the difference. So for example, to take more walks, so you're adding more walks as opposed to watching less TV, cutting out TV time, right? Um, maybe if you're to add more fruits and vegetables to your diet as opposed to cutting out junk food. See the difference? You're adding as opposed to, it's a little mental gymnastics, but hey, if it gives you an edge, take it. Another tip on this front, if you're trying to quit a behavior, replace it with a positive one. right? So, for example, say you're trying to quit smoking, right? And you're used to going out and getting your smoke break. I'm saying still get out there and take your break. Just walk around the block instead of smoking your cigarette. If you're looking for an oral fixation, instead of smoking, replace it with a carrot stick. Replace it with a stick of gum. Replace it with, so you're replacing one behavior with a positive behavior. Makes sense? So this is the step 2, where you start beginning to frame up in your mind what those action steps are being. What's it going to take to set you up for success? All right. Don't fall into that all or nothing trap. Smaller action steps is going to be the way to go. Scheduling your workouts, meal prepping, planning for things. That's part of that planning stage. So the planning stage is take a look at that. That's that third step that successful people take when they're achieving their goals and resolutions, right? So there's something to be said for writing your goals down, you guys. Research suggests that people often experience more success when they're writing down their intentions compared to just thinking about it. Yeah, I'm going to do this instead of saying them, saying I'm going to do this, because writing it down actually engages a cognitive process and it creates permanence, if you will. It's written down, right? And it strengthens our commitment, right? So look at this table on the slide here. You know, you've got some strength, weaknesses, and the least impact on stress. Thinking about it to start. Saying it out loud is good. You can gather some support, but writing it down, you guys, writing it down, the act of writing that down, going to help you out. It adds to the stickiness, that stickiness, if you will, to your commitment. There's something to be said about pen to paper, right? The more you write things down, the more those details get flushed out, the more clarity you're going to be in fine tuning your action steps. Documenting can increase your commitment to it, right? Even if it's giving yourself a gold star or a check mark, there's something gratifying and satisfying about getting that, right? And you can create your own method of tracking to monitor your progress, whatever works best for you. This is going to lead us right into our next step, right? So accountability, right? Tracking your progress can help you maintain that self accountability. So you capture and celebrate your successes along the way. Does anybody on the line have one of these smartwatches or maybe a Fitbit? Right? Maybe even have, I'm looking for my phone, an app on your phone that tracks things like the number of steps you're taking. Thumbs up. You guys have any of these kind of tools? You use them, Fitbit? Yeah. My husband uses his Fitbit to track his sleep and the quality of sleep. Love my Fitbit. Yeah. Okay, so for those of you that have these kind of tools or the apps that help track for you, monitoring your progress, right? What happens if you notice that you're not getting enough steps in? Does it motivate you a little bit? What happens if you notice that? You walk more. I've got my watch will let me know if I've been sitting too long. It'll tell me it's time to stand. And you can bet I'm standing when I feel that little vibration. We catch ourselves. So tracking our motivation or tracking our steps, our progress is huge. That's what these successful people do. You got to keep tracking it. Doesn't mean the very end, all those little steps along the way. And there are lots of different ways that you can do that. You can diary about it. You can journal. You can do spreadsheets using your apps, your smartwatches, charts, lots of again, whatever works for you. Well, let me give you a little motivation on that part because it can. And if you're saying no, I want you to ask yourself why. And if you're saying, yes, I am going to share, ask yourself why, because there's some benefits to that. You've got an accountability partner. If you've got an accountability partner, that's a really effective approach to kind of helping you keep your feet to the fire, to motivate you, to help you stick to it. You got a walking partner, you know somebody's going to be out there waiting for you. and you don't feel like it at the end of the day, it kind of helps you get there, doesn't it? So that accountability part it's really huge, right? Can be very helpful with goals, sharing it. And you don't have to just do it face to face. There are a lot of these online communities where you can share, right? You never even have to have a face. It's just seeing other people are doing it, or maybe somebody, like you're not the only one that dropped off a little bit. You can still jump back into the game. There's a lot to be said about having an accountability. But I'll tell you this step can be as simple as just asking somebody to help you stick to your goal, help you feel better doing it. All right. Know who's going to help you and who's going to sabotage you. Find out those people that are going to help you and hang with them. All right, here's that fifth step. Our fifth step is our potential for obstacles. And you know what? Daggone it, life happens, right? If you look at your resolution sheet, right? What if? What's the if plan? Planning for those obstacles. You're going to dinner, not with couples or others. How do you plan for that obstacle? What if you slip up a little bit? Anybody want to take a stab at how we can help Andrea if by chance she ate after 7? Eat something before you go. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself and daggone it, move on, right? All right. Maybe you adjust your schedule a little bit. Give yourself some grace. So you plan the what if. Say you want to go to a fitness class and you miss it, or the weather's keeping you. Maybe there's plan. If you can't do it, then what? All right. So set up some strategies or a backup plan if you get obstacles, because life happens, daggone it. These days, it seems like there's always something vying for our time and attention. So we got to plan for it. Those distractions, whether they're our spouses or just a schedule change or work gets in our way. And here are some of the things. Sometimes our physical environment can be an obstacle. Maybe it's just too daggone cluttered, or maybe it's too noisy for us to focus on. We get pop-ups if we're really trying to focus on a project, right? So try to avoid some of that clutter, right? To clear out the weeds, that which we are able to, if we can. I got a dandelion there on the screen. So our physical environment sometimes can be a deterrent. So clear out what we can and plan for it. Clear out those weeds, right? So that we can focus on um, our action steps, right? Also, we've got some mental distractions that sometimes get in the way. Those can be huge obstacles, like negative self-talk or naysayers. They can derail us, right? Or spouses that may say, come on, let's go anyway, let's do this. Well, we need to learn to blow off that negative self-talk, just like that dandelion on the screen. If it's not helping you, try to move it out or to the side, right? We can't get rid of everything, but manage or navigate around if it doesn't help you grow, right? It's got to go, right? So let me ask you, what do you see on that screen right now? What do you see? Is that a wish or is that a weed? A lot of times it's how we look at things. It's our perspective and shifting that. Talk about mental gymnastics. But you want to be sure, and you guys put this in chat also, to be flexible and understand that obstacles are going to arise. Just plan for it. The goal is progress, not always perfection, right? It's okay to be a work in progress. Write that down on your sheet of paper. It's okay to be a work in progress. All right? Life happens. All right, so the sixth step that successful people take is to celebrate along the way, right? That can be rewarding yourself for the hard work that you're putting in, for big and small steps, right? The doing so, it can help reinforce your good habits, motivate you along the way, gives you that little dopamine uh, boost, all right? So reward yourself along the way. Whatever motivates you, just little things. It doesn't have to be huge. So remember, celebrating your results can trigger that dopamine, which keeps rewarding that cycle and boost your confidence along the way. So find little things that will boost you. Maybe it's cute little things on your desk that just make you feel good when you look at them. Maybe it's the picture that you guys mentioned on your fridge that you're getting closer to, as far as if it's a goal weight or, whatever that might be. But make sure you have a little something to give yourself the attaboys to celebrate. So, all work and no play can only make you bored, right? But it can also lead to burnout. So give yourself some celebrations and victories along the way that you can reward yourself with. Well, I hope that this session's given you a lot to think about. Maybe it's even incentivized you to set a goal or a resolution for the new year, because we got a clean blank slate, right? We got a clean slate. So you've got 5 days from today's session to work on your personal 2026 resolutions, right? So take that template, download it, right? And goal yourself, you know? Just that percent of happiness and self-fulfillment of people who set goals and resolutions for themselves are more successful in life and happiness. Who doesn't want to be happier?